I do want to focus on two forms of inference that are a little bit more complicated, but they're both good ones, and we might very well, or it's pretty common in philosophy to come across these sorts of inferences. The first one is something called constructive dilemma. And the idea behind it is people give you an argument, that either one thing is true or two things is true. Think of this. Think of P being the proposition, or let me give you the case. I'm driving on the Belt Parkway from Kingsborough. I'm in Bensonhurst, and I'm approaching the Verrazano Bridge, right in Bensonhurst. Now I have a choice. Either I get on the Verrazano, so P is going to be either I get on the Verrazano, or what's Q? I continue on the Belt Parkway. Now here's what R is going to be. R is going to be I'm not in Bensonhurst. So if I get on the Verrazano, I'm not going to be in Bensonhurst. If you're worried about I'm not going to be in Bensonhurst in a half an hour, you're worried about a traffic jam, but I'm not going to be. So if I get on the Verrazano, then I'm not going to be in Bensonhurst. And if I stay on the Belt Parkway, I'm going through Bay Ridge, I'm out of Bensonhurst, then I'm not going to be in Bensonhurst. Either way, I am not going to be in Bensonhurst. And in philosophy courses and some philosophy works, this becomes a kind of an interesting inference. It's a valid inference, and it's sort of an interesting kind of argument, and that's where people have really talked about being caught on the horns of a dilemma. Usually people think about a dilemma as being an either-or statement. Neither of those, remember, it's sometimes called disjuncts. Neither disjunct is a happy one. But that's that one form of inference now that we call constructive dilemma. Now there's another form of argument. It's a good form of argument, and let's look at the second way of doing it. And you've come up with this, probably you've encountered this in math oftentimes. That is, they want to show you that whatever P is can't possibly be true. So what they tell you is, let's, for the sake of argument, assume that P is true. And based on that, they are able to show you that if we follow that assumption, we see that Q is true. And following that assumption, we also find out, maybe it's some other assumptions, that not Q is true. So we see by assuming P, that has led us to a contradiction. Therefore, we know not P is true. In other words, P is false. Another way of formulating that inference, formulating an argument using that is, if P then Q, if P then not Q, that is, if P both implies Q and not Q, then P has to be false. It has to be a contradiction. This is all based on the assumption that we cannot have contradictions in the set of things that we have good reason for believing. But these are two good patterns, valid patterns of inference that we want to keep in mind, and we might very well encounter them during the rest of the semester.